today on the Wilde Space, I have got with me the gorgeous Poppy Okotcha, who is, as you can see, a beautiful creature, but there's more to her than her visual aesthetic beauty. She's a model, but also she is a permaculturist. You need to explain what that is in a minute. I think I understand, but I understand 2%. Yeah. Also an organic grower, and I guess, you know, a nature lover. Basically, but obviously I need to introduce you because you have all of those facets to you, but just modeling aside, tell me about, because this is called the Wilde Space, you know, we're talking a little about celebrating nature. So tell us how you got involved from modeling to something that is just so beautiful around nature.
Yeah, so I've always had a relationship with nature, I'd say, and I think that goes back into like my upbringing. My mum and dad were always very nature oriented, and I went through Steiner education, which is like an alternative education system that has a lot of focus on the natural world and basically encouraging kids to get a bit muddy and, you know, play around. So I guess it's always been just like a little bit there for me. But then when I was 18, I moved to London and started modelling. And as you can imagine, got very caught up in the pace of the industry. And lucky for me, things were going well. So it was very fast paced, but I wasn't really necessarily looking after myself mentally or physically. And that sort of got to a point where I developed IBS and was not particularly happy. And at that stage, you know, when doctors diagnose with IBS, they don't necessarily offer a lot further than that because it's a bit of an unknown realm. So I kind of went on a bit of a mission to self-heal, and a lot of that was about stress management and sort of exploring diet, at which point I started to connect the dots between like the importance of healthy nutritious diet and how that connects with planetary health, because obviously if you're having food that is full of chemicals and coming out of nutrient deficit soils, the food itself is not going to be supportive or nourishing. And so that, alongside this kind of exploration into de-stressing myself, meant that I was spending a lot of time with plants, started growing a lot of plants. And those two things together kind of led me down this path of realizing that actually human health and planetary health are just utterly connected in so many ways, like not just in terms of our mental health and like beauty, appreciation of beauty, but also in terms of like our actual physical health, and not just our gut health, also our respiratory health, etc. So that's kind of what has led me here, and also an understanding that not everybody has access to nature or good nutritious food, and so trying to kind of advocate for a situation where we're empowered to grow some of our own food, even if it's just like some sprouts on the windowsill. It still brings this like connection with nature and experiencing something miraculous as a seed germinating is really inspiring, as well as giving a sense of empowerment and taking back an element of control over our food supply system.
Completely. And just hearing you say that, just the witness of growing something from seed, you know, if you're, you know, a 5-year-old growing some watercress for the first, or mustard and cress, you know, I'll never forget that. And just that, yeah. It is a miracle. Nature is a miracle, and we just take it for granted. But it's everything you've said. I just thought, oh my God, this is exactly why we've got you in the Wilde Space, because this is just, oh, yum, yum, yum. So for me, all the absolutely relevant touch points are physical health. So IBS, shocking, awful, absolutely understand all of that. And doctors just see it as a physical thing, not what has led to this. And then for you to be able to take the initiative and just think, okay, so this is a gut issue, but so I need to understand this a little bit more and not just go on to, you know, prescribed medicine, but just think about what you're ingesting and how, nourishment is that there are so many people do consume on a regular basis empty foods, and with my background in No, in my background in nutrition, it's you know, people just need to be told that it's so easy. You don't have, it's not about money. It's not about, I don't have the income to support a healthy diet. It's about knowledge. And I think that that's a wonderful thing, that you can nourish your mind, body, soul, right? Those three connectors, and our glorious planet, and those two interconnecting things, that whole ecosystem of us as humans living in this glorious, miraculous planet, but just understanding one another a little bit better. But tell me, what is permaculture? Educate me.
Okay, so
it's a little bit nebulous in my mind.
Yeah,
I don't fully understand it.
I mean, I think that the thing is with permaculture, because it is a holistic design ethos or system, it's very easy for it to kind of sort of become a bit fuzzy and like this sort of grey area in people's minds. And sometimes even in my mind, it becomes a bit kind of like almost a feeling or like a verb or something. But permaculture was dreamed up in the 80s by a guy called Bill Mollison, and it's basically, he was he studied ecosystems basically, and he had this observation where he was like, actually in nature, when we look at sustainability in nature, natural ecosystems, or systems as he calls them, have this like capacity or ability to just self-sustain, and not just to sustain but to regenerate, and that ability to sustain through regeneration leads to these like perfect cycles. So if you think of like a British hedgerow, which I'm sure we've all experienced, like nobody has to go there to weed it, nobody has to go and fertilize the soil, it just kind of looks after itself. And these are the sort of systems that Bill Mollison suggests in his permaculture design theory that we should be trying to emulate. So reducing things like waste is like a big part of permaculture design. And in order to design systems, and systems could be a garden, it could be your home, it could be your route to work, it could be your yoga club, it could be any kind of space or environment, physical or emotional, where you want to kind of improve the way things run. And so in order to do that, Bill Mollison came up with 12 principles that can be loosely followed where appropriate, to help to just basically redesign the way we live in so many different areas, to try and emulate these natural regenerative systems.
So therefore, could it be, as well as nature and bringing nature into play, into the whole system, because that is, nature does have that positive influence, does it also include design and architecture in kind of like in totality, as in harmony with nature?
Yes, so there's lots of examples of eco-villages, or even buildings. Like there's a lot of discussion of building sustainably within the area of permaculture. So permaculture is like the designing of a sustainable life holistically. So it's like addressing every facet of life. So for me personally, I predominantly use it in the garden with growing, but when you really start to read into the idea of permaculture, it just starts to sort of trickle into everything in your life, because you know, you start to realize it's all connected. And it's one thing to be growing with these like ethos at heart, but if you're then also like constantly consuming throwaway items, then it's kind of don't quite work. So it becomes the sort of evaluation of our life at large. And you know, within permaculture, there's a massive emphasis on the idea of people care and land care, and how these are connected. And for me, that really resonates. And this idea of resilient communities. And I feel that alongside this like understanding of nature, those two things together have such a healing capacity, because, you know, connecting over natural things is just amazing.
Well, and exactly, and it's the positive influence of one with the other, not over the other, but one with the other. And I think maybe it's a very a subconscious thing, but if you have got the mindset which is restorative, it's sustain, it's resourcefulness, all of those things that come into sort of like an ethical consciousness, I think probably what's so fascinating about it, because for example, studying theories about how these systems can support one another, if just managing, but not overly managing, because humans always go along and think they know better, but no, nature can teach us a lot. If it ain't broke, don't change it, kind of thing. Like your hedgerow philosophy, I think that's just so fantastic, how it just naturally just sustains itself, and it doesn't need us pricking and pruning it. The hedgehogs do that, the beetles do that, the whatever, it's what it's sorted. But in the consciousness of wanting to kind of understand that and the principles of that on a larger scale, I think permaculture is fascinating. So thank you for educating me on that, because I'm gonna, what's his name again, the dude who created the study?
Bill Mollison, and there's a fantastic documentary that's free on YouTube. Don't remember what it's called, but it's like, it's a very vintagey feeling, but he speaks really well, and that's a really good documentary to find if you want to explore it more. But it's just like, I love permaculture because we all have these like ideas about reconnecting with nature and like sustainability, and we all have, like, so many of us have a desire to really change our lives for the better, and permaculture just offers like such a clear, accessible framework for doing that, because oftentimes you have conversations and people are like, oh, I just don't know what to do, it's overwhelming, like, where do you begin? And permaculture is just a really lovely, easy framework that you can use for literally any area of your life to just kind of reassess where things are at. And it's all about this idea of, like you said, observing before you interact, and like, going a bit softly rather than like heavy-handed. So it's just so usable. And that's why I talk about it a lot, because I just think it's such an accessible framework for people to use if they feel that way inclined.
Completely, and it's so it's respecting the delicacy of understanding the whole process. And I my daughter will love it, because she loves growing things. All lockdown, she's been growing everything from seed, and now we're everything's bearing fruit. And she whittles spoons. For Christmas I get a wooden spoon, or she's weaving. She wants to build a tiny house, a tiny little wooden house. And I'm just this is something that I'm observing from the young, that our new generation, the modern generation of the millennials, more specifically. It's just this sense of responsibility for our planet, and that this is our home, and abuse your home or don't understand your home and we're in trouble. There's only so much you can do with obviously environmental problems at the minute are overwhelming and very tragic, but I think I also trust in the power of healing, of nature being able to heal it, just stepping back for a minute. And this whole pandemic thing, I think, has made everybody level out and just understand everything at a base camp level. So I think that is just really, really important. But I'm fascinated. So I understand you live in a wee houseboat or on a canal, is that right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I live on a boat in West London on the canal. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so fantastic. I need to come and see you, because when we were kids, we had a houseboat.
Oh.
And I cannot tell you my memories of it. It's just so magical. Just the feeling of being on water. It's just beautiful. It was near Hampton Court, sort of Teddington, that neck of the woods, just on the river there. But how on earth does one get to do that? I mean, that's quite a find. That must really suit your soul, being somewhere like that.
Well, actually, funny story, where I grew up when I was like a teenager, it was a village in the countryside, and we lived along the canal, and the canal there is quite empty and, like, I guess a bit more traditional. Like, the people who live there have been doing it for years. It's a far older community who are living on the canal there, so I was never like particularly drawn to it. It didn't feel that accessible for me. And then when I came to London and met my boyfriend, and we were together in his apartment, his balcony overlooked the canal, and we'd always see people at that point. This was like 6 years ago. A lot of people weren't on the canal. It was kind of becoming a bit new, and people were kind of buying boats and doing them up. So we'd always be looking out the window like, oh, that looks fun, like they're doing up their boats. And Toby, my partner, has worked on boats in his past, like he's really into boats. So one day he was like, let's just try it out. And I initially was quite resistant because of like my experience when I was younger. It just felt like a community that wasn't particularly accessible for like a young Black woman, basically. And but we tried it out for one summer. I absolutely fell in love with it. The boating community in London is incredibly welcoming and just like so supportive and like wonderful. I've loved living on a boat, and that one summer we trial ran it, we both fell in love with it and decided to stick at it. And now we've been here for, no, it can't be 6 years, must be 5 years, 4 years.
Amazing. What a feeling.
Yeah,
but as you say, that the community feeling, and it's kind of old school. I mean, this is how travelers traveled. It's how that sort of connecting of canals is how people moved about in the good old days. So has a lot of history, and I think that's really actually truly magical. So I personally think that gives me goosebumps. I'm very jealous of you.
And it's been quite an experience because, of course, like on the boat, we're kind of like a little self-sustaining bubble because we're not connected to like water and electric in the same way a house is. So it's been such a lesson in understanding how much we use and how much we waste, I guess, because you have to fill up your water tank every time you run out of water. You have to keep the fire on to keep warm. You have to get rid of your rubbish. The bin men don't just arrive and magic it away. So there's kind of like all these little points in life that I personally took for granted before coming to the boat, and now that I'm just a bit more aware of them. And I think with awareness comes like an element of gratitude, because now like I'm just like so grateful for these things, because I guess I have like an understanding that they're not necessarily going to just be there always.
No, completely. But how else is anybody else in the 21st century going to know that my water supply is going to run out, literally one more kettle and I'm out, because we're used to this limitless supply, and you take it for granted, and you have no sense of
what a miracle, how awesome that is.
Beginning, middle and end. Yeah, exactly. That I need to be responsible for this. I think that's joyful because one of my happiest moments was living in a little cottage where it had an electric meter, where you had to have your little key and put your £10 in, and you could hear it sort of ticking away in the background, and you had visibility, you had that connection with your resources, I guess. And that does make you really respectful and mindful of being not being greedy, and not just, as you say, just taking for granted that these are resources. Respect them and be mindful about how you use them. But living on a canal boat, have you got a garden on your roof, or have you got an allotment? How does that work if you're growing all these gorgeous organic things? Where do you do that?
So to begin with, I was growing indoors. Like at the very beginning, it was all houseplants. And then it sort of like evolved out onto the boat deck and then onto the roof. Now I grow indoors on the deck and on the roof. We've got a 60-foot boat that's about 12 feet wide. So there's a fair amount of space on the roof for me to grow on. It's all in containers, which is sad because I love interacting with the actual earth, not just like the isolated earth, if that makes sense. But I've been very lucky that for the last 2 years we've been on a permanent mooring spot, which has meant that I have like a little strip of land adjacent to the boat. So to begin with, I was very excited and tried to make it into a productive garden. Very quickly was taught a lesson by nature, which was that she didn't want to be grown in that place because there's a series of really ancient massive willows along that strip, which every spring come out in like thick foliage. So underneath not a lot happens. And that was like a really important lesson in, like, I guess I had this idea in my head, oh, I have land, I own this land now, which is very quite a modern Western way of interacting with the earth. This is my spot and I'll make it do what I want it to do. And I didn't even realize I had that mindset in me. And then when it didn't work, eventually I was like, actually, these willow trees, they're just going to do what they're going to do, and I might as well like go along with their will. So now I kind of leave it to be wild, and it's such a paradise for birds. It's amazing.
Oh my
But
God,
that was a really good
yes,
lesson in just
because
like,
you couldn't control that.
yeah, and I don't have to control it. And I think that indigenous wisdom about this idea of, you know, land stewardship rather than like ownership or control, and, you know, there's so much wisdom to be drawn from that as well.
Yeah, just we need to listen to nature. You know, we came onto the planet, right? So we were already trespassing really on something that already existed. So I think, you know, being guardians of it and just learning from it. No, you beautifully put. Beautiful.
Or even further from that, even like taking that further, it's like we're part of it. So like we can't fight with ourselves. Like we are part of that natural.
No, but I think
we're just dressed up in clothes.
No, possibly, but I think, you know, again, we're learning from that all the time. And, you know, but for you, a young person, vibrant person, you're out there, you're communicating, you're sharing your lessons with a younger community, or with the community that's willing to listen. How do you find that how you have decided to conduct your life and really immerse yourself into nature and respecting your environment and having some sense of form to hence the permaculture, having some kind of form and methodology within nature? How do you share that with your community? Do you kind of get involved with local kind of community mentorship or anything like that, or just, you know, how do you share your learnings?
Okay, so before lockdown, I was working with a few different community groups local to me. I was working with one which is, they have like a vegetable garden where the school students come, primary school kids come and basically plant seeds, then they come back a few months later and harvest what they planted. So that's quite like an exciting project for them. And they love it because they can get out of the classroom and just like be wild, and the whole thing is about encouraging them to be muddy and like messy and all that stuff. And then they also within that project have a forest garden, which is a garden that has a lot of edible crops, a lot of useful plants, but grown in the structure of a forest. So it's like got canopy trees and then, you know, hedgy middle story and then the ground cover. So they've got those kind of two aspects in that community garden, which I've absolutely loved working there. And then I was also involved with another project which was basically working on trying to bring greenery into the the London Overground, and so I was designing some permaculture inspired planters, so they'd be sort of dotted along my local train station, and they'd hold in them plants that were encouraging for wildlife, as well as being plants that, you know, if you're walking along on your commute to work, you could just take a couple of leaves of mint or whatever to have at home with your tea.
That is so cool.
Those are the projects that I was actively involved with before lockdown. Lockdown was really frustrating because obviously I couldn't be out there doing those things, and, you know, all the volunteer programs were shut down. So that's when I really started pushing what I had to share on social media, because I didn't have the physical outlet. And yeah, so now it's all about, I make a lot of videos on Instagram. I think I probably should be moving over to YouTube, just because my videos are often way too long to upload to Instagram.
Oh, that is hard. That is hard. YouTube would be fantastic, having your own channel, but I think you're already getting there, you know, because you're already, you know, obviously we knew about you, but obviously we have a sort of similar tribe. So that was how we were connected in the first place. But your world, your voice now, there are more ears to listen to it now more than ever. And I think what you're doing, you know, for communities and I'm just impressed that, you know, local councils and things would, not impressed, actually, damn right, that they should start to welcome and give you opportunity and access to be able to bring nature to the local community, because, you know, London can be a grey, soulless place sometimes, and, you know, but there is so much beauty in an urban environment, as you say, you know, with wildlife. I mean, unbelievable community of wildlife in cities. It's incredible. And in a way to help support and keep that going, because even the little critters, some of whom aren't always welcome, they're part of it, and it demonstrates that this whole ecosystem is around all the tiny little, you know, down from algae to bugs to, you know, it's you know, Mother Nature, and it's a beautiful, reassuring thing, thinking that it really does happen, you know, everywhere you go, but just to kind of keep that going is really important. And but so you've described how you have found lockdown an opportunity for you actually to be able to communicate that effectively on Instagram, on social media, because it is a fantastic forum for all of that, and you would have inadvertently, as a byproduct, raised your profile, which is fantastic, because, you know, people have got an appetite for this now. And I think it's kind of like a mental health thing, where as well, just to reconnect to what really matters, and because we've all taken a back seat and being put back in our places, you know, with a jolt, as to kind of, okay, this is out of my control, there's nothing, I can't fight this. This is something that I must observe, witness, learn from, educate myself. And I think it's just good to know that you are being proactive in that. And in fact, you're finding more time to communicate and study and to share. And I think that is something that for people who are feeling a little bit stuck, because I think some people are feeling a little bit stuck, they've gone through their kind of process of lockdown. They might have, you know, it's kind of had like phase A, B, and C. We're now in phase C, which is kind of like, you know, can I move now? A was panic. B was, what am I doing? I better make the most of this. And C is kind of like, you know, how do I be this new person? And it's been a fascinating process, but I'm just really glad that you have been able to, you know, both visually through some beautiful imagery. I've seen obviously on social, you've done some beautiful pictures where you obviously photograph well because you're a model, but it's, you know, you're a beautiful creature, so it's a lovely thing. And I think such a positive thing, because it's not, you know, it's not ramming down our throats kind of, you know, this is something that I believe in, therefore I just think it is just, it's a really positive, beautiful thing. And I think in the same way that we're learning through a lot of people who we normally know for other things. Example, Arizona Muse. She's in her farm, she is growing things, she's connecting with nature, she's got some little one, she's got a little baby, so she's able to kind of like, you know, help influence her children into this whole new world of being responsible for what you grow, because that's actually what you'll end up eating. So that is a positive thing. So, you know, thank you for being part of that, you know, conversation. And, you know, and I wish you well with it. Have you got, when things go back to normal, have you got something that you're particularly looking forward to that you want to get going with?
Well, before everything happened, before lockdown happened, I was a week away from launching a supper club on the boat, and it was going to be a supper club with a foraging walk. And so I don't know if there's really necessarily going to be scope to follow that anytime soon, because the world's different now. But I'm certainly going to be, there's some projects in the pipeline that are going to be a bit more new world friendly, in that they won't be dependent on whether the pandemic comes back or or falls or whatever. But for me, it's like, I think that lockdown has really been a reality check, in that I've realized how lucky I am. Like, it's been hard, but I've just been pinching myself the whole way through that I'm just in this insanely like lucky position, or maybe privileged is the right word. And, you know, I have a home, I have a supportive family who thankfully are all well, and I have resources and I have the ability to share them. And I feel like it has, for me, just been such a kind of reality check where I'm like, okay, like, I have to share, because when all's said and done, like you said, the knowledge is like everything. And I feel like if we're in these positions of privilege that may or may not have been highlighted by the context of lockdown, it's so important that we share what we've got, be that knowledge or resource or whatever it is. But yeah, in my instance, it was knowledge, and I 100% intend to continue doing that into post corona or whatever comes our way next, because that's something that I'll be taking with me for the rest of my life. This like feeling of, if I'm feeling gratitude, then I should be giving, because if I've got it,
then sharing it. I know I know exactly what you mean. And it is kind of like, it's kind of like a sense of, it's a sense of gratitude, a sense of blessing. It's kind of like what love is, right? And if you've got, you know, if you've got that feeling of love and positivity, you kind of want to share that. And I think I'm hoping that that's going to be more evident with a lot of people's, you know, perspectives, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I wanted to create Wilde Space, is that I'm meeting a lot of different people on talking about a lot of different topics, from mental health to you know, wilderness, to travel, to adventure, to, you know, all kinds of, you know, culture, architecture, all kinds of things which I believe hold beauty within them. And how can you always keep something positive with in every scenario, in every context, in every conversation, in every genre, and I think, let's just keep on doing that, and you keep on doing that, and I think your foraging thing will be really exciting, because I love foraging. I used to live in the New Forest on the south coast, and there's a lot of foraging there. I've done some foraging in Spain and in Italy, and that's just so exciting, you know. And I just think it's a lovely thing to educate people on, you know, that you know, this is abundance. Yes. And it's just seeing things in their true form, you know, that hasn't been kind of, you know, messed with from a supermarket, is magic. And it's all magical. So it's all very exciting, and thank you for sharing it, you know, visually on your Instagram, and obviously your content that you're creating is really inspiring. So keep on doing that, and keep on growing on your canal boat. And I'm sure there's stuff that you can, we'll watch this space, won't we? Stuff that you'll be doing and sharing. And I hope to meet you in real life after all of this. And I'll come and see you if you'll invite me, I'll come and see you on your canal boat, because that's memory lane for me.
100%. Yeah, that would be lovely to have you.
That would be so groovy. But listen, I wish you all the luck in the world with everything, and look after yourself, and we will keep in touch. But thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and learnings, and truly inspiring, Poppy. Keep it going.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely to speak with you.
My pleasure. All the best. Take care.
You too.